Wilson Auto Repair. Going to do a little bit of a video on steering today to help guys out that are kind of befuddled about what goes on with the steering column of the steering wheel and how to get it all apart in case you're hearing some noises, you have a problem, or you say you want to swap out your steering wheel. So in this case, I've already got the puller set up that actually pulls this collar attachment right here or a regular steering wheel, just depending on which. But you can buy this kit right here. I guess you could probably rent it somewhere too, but basically what it is this is called a puller, and we attach these 3 bolts to this component right here, and as we turn this like that, it will pull that back out of there so that we can get access to what's under there. Now, as you remember, I did a video recently about turn signal switches, and you'll have to do all this just to access the switch that you see back in here, this white thing. This is where the lever works on your steering or your turn signal switch. So now let's go back up just a minute. If you don't have a steering wheel like this is an aftermarket wheel that has additional components to help it bolt up in place of the original factory steering wheel, but this puller will work on either one of them. Now you're going to have to change the different lengths of the bolts and kind of learn how to get this attached in there so you can get it onto the steering wheel. Sometimes you only use 2 bolts, sometimes you use 3, and then you turn this like so. I can almost do it with my hand, and it will pull this back up out of there. Now what happens after this? Well, the next thing that happens when you have we're talking about steering now, is there's a shaft that goes through what this is called the column. This is just a pipe that's open that goes down through there. It contains some of the shifter mechanisms, some of the turn signal switch, some of the wiring for that, but also there's a 1-inch shaft or so that sometimes we call them double D shafts. They have a flat side to them. They go down through here and attach to the gearing and all the mechanisms to make your wheels turn. So right up here we're using the steering wheel. We know how to get the steering wheel off, I hope. And if we want to pull the steering column, we have to go down on the underside and disconnect it. Take this cover off, and there's 2 bolts up under here, and that we call that dropping the steering column down, and eventually it will come out as one piece with the steering wheel on it. You do have to disconnect the electrical up here. There's a wiring, and you'll also, if the ignition switch is on the column and not in the dash, then you're going to have to disconnect it under there. First rule on anything that's electrical, remember, is to always disconnect your battery so you don't fry a bunch of wires while you're trying to get this all apart. So sometimes people want to replace steering columns, they have to get in there and work on it because there are bearings in here that support this shaft high and low. There are other parts in here that you may find that, like, there's a shift tube in here that connects to this, and it actually connects to the transmission, and sometimes all that stuff has to be fixed, and you need to pull the steering column, or you want to buy one that's a better looking one or works better, then you have to buy that and install it and take this out. So now let's go around to the front. Let me just show you where this attaches under the hood. So this is where the steering shaft comes through, and it's encapsulated in the steering column, but it comes through. Now I'm going to show you what happens when you turn the steering wheel. Turn the steering wheel, wiggle it a little bit. See there, right there? That means that you're trying to make the wheels turn right to left. Then if you come down here, a little picture on that one, it's still doing it right there, and it goes into this component called the steering gearbox. This is the component that actually moves the wheels when you're turning your steering wheel. It's also part of the power steering. Here's the power steering pump that's driven by this belt, and here's a hose that comes off and attaches way down there to send power steering fluid in here under pressure to give you power steering so that it's easier to turn this truck. This is called the power steering gearbox, or the steering gearbox. These are called these are universal joints that you can buy anywhere, but so you can get the right angle with your steering shaft once you get the steering column in. So now let's go underneath and see what that looks like. So when he's turning the steering wheel, you can see now this is called the pitman arm, and this is moving like this so that it transfers the circular motion into this lateral motion here to move the wheels. This is loose, that's why it acts like it's something wrong with it, but we've already taken this loose and got it ready to go. These are called tie rod ends right here and right here, and they screw in and out. One will have a right-hand thread, one will have a left-hand thread. This is the sleeve that tightens it down after you've made all the adjustments, and these are called drag links or tie rod ends. shafts, if that's depending on what parts you're trying to buy. So all of this is going to come off, and we're going to replace it with a component list called a Clydesdale that makes it a little bit stiffer and stronger to try to control this truck a little bit better with these big tires on it. So now we're going to show you how you would take a tie rod end loose. So this is we call this a pickle fork, or just a tool that we use to separate the tie rod from the spindle to get them loose. So we're going to give you an example of how that's used. It's just a wedge, as you can see on the side, and you put it in there and hit it with a hammer and it'll knock the tie rod loose. You can buy that on any of the tool sites like Amazon or Eastwood, and you can also buy a kit like this if you want to buy a complete kit that has a lot more tools in here to take apart different components on your steering system. I think I've got this listed on my website if you want to try to find it on there and buy it. Okay, Dan, I'll give it a little shot there what you do. So you just take a hammer and hit it right there a couple times, and that'll separate, it'll come apart. You take the whole thing apart, and then you either replace the components like the tie rod ends or the whole thing. It depends on how you buy it. I'm Barry Wilson with Wilson Auto Repair. Go to our website at wilsonauto.com for more videos on how to work on your car. We're installing the Clydesdale front end tie rod linkage on this Ford truck. Interesting how this was made together. I think we got some of this from one of the Bronco places and one from Rare Parts. But they're using ball joints as the tie rod ends, and then fuse material for the tie rod link, or drag link as you might call them, to give this front end a lot of strength so that it doesn't try to road walk when you drive it. Can't wait to see how it works on this. We actually installed it on another 79 Bronco, but we haven't been able to drive it yet. You can see that we're putting the tie rod ends up into the arms of the front end on each wheel, and we're going to put the nuts on there. Then we're going to torque them down to about 70 pounds, put cotter pins in them, mark them, take them to the front end shop on Monday, get the toe in line, and then we will go drive this truck to see how it improves. Barry Wilson, Wilson Auto Repair. Go to my website, wilsonauto.com, hit subscribe and link.